Dave, you got no audio. It's 4:30 Wednesday afternoon. It's been like that for about 10 minutes. Just wanted to let you know. Okay, goodbye.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sports4CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. Last night, a little bit of technical difficulties in the second half of our show, so we apologize. We will promise to bring you some video, some audio, and all good things. Scheduled guest today, Marisa Contipelli, will be along to talk about the Bengals as well as the Browns. She is a Bengals team reporter for the Cincinnati Bengals. We begin, though, by talking about the Cleveland Browns, and we welcome in Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com, Dan Labbe. Dan, the offense working not at OTAs, but down in Austin, Texas, Camp Mayfield, as we have referred to it. What do you think they got done working together out by themselves in Austin?
I think the big thing is probably just getting that timing back and making sure everybody's on the same page as far as that is concerned. Kevin Stefanski made it very clear to us on Wednesday that his jurisdiction ends in Berea. He has nothing to do with what's going on in Austin. But I think the big thing is just timing, kind of building a little bit of that camaraderie. And I think it's great that a guy like Odell Beckham was there and Jarvis Landry was there, that you saw some of the bigger names make appearances in Austin to work with Baker Mayfield and company, because it's just really about making sure when you get to camp, you know, all those little things are ironed out so you can focus on the task at hand.
Do you think it's a good thing that, you know, they went and did that on their own? And again, it's important to everybody to keep in mind, OTAs are not mandatory. They're voluntary. And Kevin Stefanski makes sure that he says that quite a bit.
Yeah, Kevin Stefanski crosses every T, dots every I, makes sure that he doesn't step out of line when it comes to anything, and he certainly hasn't in this regard. And I think the big thing is just watching these OTA practices and seeing the focus on individual work. You can't do a lot of stuff team-wise. There's just so many limitations on contact, and you can't wear pads, all of that. You can just understand why getting guys together in Austin like Baker Mayfield is can be just as effective as what's going on in Berea. You're just doing it without coaching. And, you know, as my colleague Mary Kay Cabot has pointed out, you also don't have to deal with a lot of the COVID protocols, getting tested all the time, maybe having to quarantine, all of those things. It just makes life a little bit easier for some of these guys.
All right. Having said that, another set of OTAs, you had the availability to go out and watch and see what was going on yesterday. What'd you see? What struck you?
It did strike me a little bit that the Browns had almost their whole secondary together. You know, John Johnson III showed up this week. Troy Hill was there. Grant Delpit was back on the field. That was enormous to see a guy coming back from an Achilles injury. We're about 10 months removed now from that injury. So to see him on the field working, Greedy Williams on the field working, Greg Newsome as well. Denzel Ward has been there at both practices that we've been at, so I'd assume he's been there, you know, the full time during both weeks. It's just good to see that whole secondary together. And, you know, I forgot to mention Ronnie Harrison, too, who's been there the last 2 weeks. So you're getting an idea of what that group might look like. And going into training camp, we'll really get to see how Joe Woods deploys these guys. But for me, that was the most exciting thing from Wednesday, is we really got to see that whole secondary group together for the first time.
Well, one of the guys you mentioned, John Johnson, talked about the Browns' defensive look and talked a little bit about what it might be like with three safeties playing. Let's listen to John Johnson.
I think it's a little early, a little premature. You know, once we get into game planning, I think it'll be, you know, different every week, honestly. But, you know, when you got three guys that can go, that can play, that you know can play, it's easy to, you know, create schemes and create blitzes, create patterns, coverages that, you know, we can all play and match up against different people. So I think during the season is when it'll really take full effect. But right now, I think it's just moving around, playing different spots for everybody out there in the field, not just the safeties, nickels, corners, dime linebackers, just seeing what we can do, how well we move and stuff like that. So I think during the season, it'll probably get exotic.
And Dan, that's the thing that has to be some fun for Joe Woods, is figuring out what he can do with all the guys that can play multiple positions.
And the big thing he can do, and I think John Johnson touched on this, is it can be different every single week. There can be some weeks, you know, maybe you go against Lamar Jackson and you want to have 7 defensive backs on the field like the Chargers did back in his rookie year in that playoff game. Or, maybe you want to go bigger when you go against Lamar Jackson, or you want to go bigger against, somebody else. There's so many different things that they can do where they can go maybe base heavy one week and then they're going a bunch of DBs the next week. It's almost like a basketball team. You can just sort of look at your matchups every single game and pick out how you want to attack and how you want to approach and defend against the team you're facing that week. I think there's a chance this defense in certain ways could look very different week to week.
Now we know mandatory minicamp comes next week. What do you expect from that? Do you know what to expect as you get ready for Brown's mandatory minicamp?
I think we'll get a better idea of maybe what this defense might look like. Now, again, there's still the same restrictions. We're not going to see like padded 11-on-11 tackle periods or anything like that. But, we'll see a little bit of teamwork and we'll get to hopefully see that first team offense work against, at least what is now the first team defense. And there's going to be changes on that defense as training camp and the preseason go along. But I think we'll get an idea of where guys stand, especially on that defensive side of the football. Like, who are the starting safeties? Who are your two starting corners? Who starts at linebacker? I think we'll get a really good idea of stuff like that to really set up some of the battles to watch in training camp.
Dan Labbe, Browns beat reporter for The Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. On the other side of the break, Greg Newsome has selected his new agent, and it's a pretty big name. We'll talk about that. Plus, John Johnson, we'll hear from him on if this defense will take a long time to gel. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Life is starting to get back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tric-edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Welcome back to Sports for CLE. We continue talking Browns football with Dan Labbe, Browns beat reporter for The Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. Greg Newsome, Browns first-round pick, made some news earlier in the week when he decided to go away from CAA, it's a pretty big agency, and get a new agent. It doesn't really matter because the first contract's kind of set in stone anyway. Parameters are very strict as to what can be done. Today, we found out Greg Newsome has chosen his new agent, and it's a pretty big name via Twitter. Let's take a look as it is Drew Rosenhaus. So Drew Rosenhaus is the new player agent, and so Dan, that's a pretty big name as you look at what Greg Newsome did.
Yeah, Drew Rosenhaus is about as big as it gets in the NFL, and he's a guy that's never afraid to flex his muscle for his clients if he wants to, force their way out of some place or get them a new contract, something like that. The good news for Browns fans, there's not really a whole lot to stress out about right now. That Greg Newsome deal will get done because there's not much to really discuss in these rookie deals. Maybe some offset language, which, if you have to really start using offset language on your draft picks, then you have bigger problems than that. So that deal should get done. And, sometimes that Rosenhaus name, people hear it and they cringe a little bit, but in reality, I don't think it's going to play any factor in Greg Newsome's future or anything like that here. I think he's going to be a Cleveland Brown for a long time. Yeah,
and by and large, it's usually when it's quarterback related that you start to cringe a little bit with the Drew Rosenhaus name. But yeah, and it's kind of interesting that CAA, it's not like it's a small boutique type agency. So he went from a pretty big agency to a heavy hitter, and you got to believe it's endorsements and those kind of things that he believes Rosenhaus will help with.
Yeah, look, it's an impressive move for a young guy to go from. Like you said, CAA is nothing to sneeze at. They have a portfolio, athletes and entertainers, and just across the board. But to kind of flex that muscle as a young kid, 20 years old, signing with Drew Rosenhaus, it tells you something about maybe what his profile could be if he gets on that field and he plays early.
And there you see Drew Rosenhaus welcoming Greg Newsome to the Rosenhaus family. And yeah, you know what? Good for Greg Newsome. He is quite an impressive young guy and has handled himself really well in front of the media. All right, so a lot has been made. Browns have a whole bunch of new pieces on defense, potentially as many as 9 new starters. And the question is, boy, is it going to take them a long time to gel? This is what one of those new guys who has played on a number 1 ranked defense, John Johnson, said about it taking a while for the Browns defense to gel.
I don't think it's a concern, but it's definitely something that you got to be proactive about. And that's why, a couple of guys came this week, to stay on top of things before minicamp, and then going into training camp, we'll be firing more comfortable, and we can build that foundation so that we can actually, start working on this beautiful house that we're about to build. I think so. It's coming around. The first day I kind of, I was surveying, scanning, just feeling guys out. I feel more comfortable now just talking and making my presence felt. So it'll come, as we move along. But yeah, I think it's just natural. Just my personality. I love talking trash, competing. So I just like having fun, and it's going to pay off.
So the second part of that, he was talking about being a leader of that defense. And Dan, it strikes me when a guy that's come over from not the top-ranked defense says, we're building something here. It's better than you and I saying it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. This is a guy that knows what a great defense looks like. And, when he talks about that leadership component, it's just so important. You think about him showing up to this week of OTAs. You think about Anthony Walker showing up. He's been there all throughout. Myles Garrett showed up last week. Denzel Ward has been there for 2 weeks. We can overrate sometimes the meaning of OTAs and the work that gets done in OTAs. I don't think many teams actually do things that, if they win the Super Bowl, we're going to look back and say, boy, that all started in OTAs. But having leaders there, especially on a group that's, really trying to establish itself and establish their identity on the defensive side of the ball, I think it does matter that these guys get a little face-to-face interaction. They get some time with the coaching staff before they all go off on their summer breaks before training camp. I think it does kind of help settle things down before you show up at the end of July.
So we mentioned both Anthony Walker and John Johnson. Those are what we refer to as green dot guys. Those are the guys that hear the call and are responsible for helping everybody line up in the proper space. That's hugely important. If you have a number of guys that can do that, that should lead to some really good things for your defense.
And it really helps to have it on all levels of the defense too, because, Anthony Walker might be the guy wearing that green sticker and he might play a bunch of snaps at middle linebacker, but John Johnson and any safety on the back end of that defense, it's really important because they're the guys that can kind of see everything right before the snap. And it's really important that they understand and that they're able to get guys where they need to be, that they see the game, a second before everyone else. It's important to have that at all levels of that defense, but to have Anthony Walker, who, Darius Leonard just raved about and was, on social media seemed heartbroken that he left the Colts, and John Johnson, who is a leader of the best defense in football. it really does matter to sort of establish that culture, and just when everything is chaotic on a Sunday afternoon, to have a couple of guys out there that can calm the waters and say, this is where everybody needs to be. This is how we're going to get that football back. Everybody just relax.
So Bleacher Report ranked the teams that are set up for the future. And the Browns are on this list. Top 7, the Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens. That's 1, 2, 3. 4 is the 49ers. 5, 6, and 7 are the Browns, Cardinals, and Dolphins. And if you think about it for a half second, those are all the young quarterbacks that are pretty good in the NFL.
It's young quarterbacks, and honestly, I'm surprised to see the Browns as low on this list as they are, because they have so much young talent. I mean, we sit here all the time and just talk about these guys who are so young. Denzel Ward, Myles Garrett is still really young. It seems like he's been playing forever. I mean, the old guys are like Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham, and they haven't even turned 30 yet. Anthony Walker, a guy we just talked about, is really young. So I'm a little surprised the Browns are at 5. I mean, that's great, but I'm surprised to see them below some other teams on this list, considering how young so many of their key players are. And maybe it's just because, whoever did the list hasn't bought in yet on Baker Mayfield. But yeah, I mean, you see 3 teams there. Obviously, the Ravens were on that list. The Browns are on that list, the Bills on that list, and then kind of sneaking down there a 4th team, the Dolphins. The AFC is going to be really competitive for a long time.
Yeah, and I agree with you. The thing is not only are the Browns young and talented, I think the way that they have handled the extensions and the way they're handling the salary cap is going to allow them to keep those pieces together for as long as they see fit.
Yeah, they're going to be able to extend who they want to extend. So they can take care of Baker. They can take care of Denzel Ward. They've already taken care of Myles Garrett. Whatever they decide to do with Nick Chubb, if they want to pay him, they're going to be able to do that. And then I think Andrew Berry really has already shown he understands how to fill in the gaps. So you look at what he did at middle linebacker. He goes out and finds a guy like B.J. Goodson, who was fine last year, signs him to a 1-year deal, replaces him with Anthony Walker, another 1-year deal. Troy Hill, it wasn't a 1-year deal, but essentially it is. The Browns can move on at that slot corner position if they want to, or they can keep him around for a little bit longer. Andrew Berry really seems to understand the importance of that flexibility. Pay your core and then really kind of tinker around it.
So CBS.com has an under-the-radar player in the AFC for several teams that could be stars. For the Browns, tight end Harrison Bryant. I know this is a guy that you liked a lot last year. Do you see what CBS.com is seeing in him that he could be a guy that develops into a star?
He's an interesting piece, especially with David Njoku. And I think that's going to be one of the sneaky battles to watch. Austin Hooper is probably your tight end 1. You went out and paid him last year. I think he got better as the year went along. And you've got to give him a chance to really sort of, continue to grow with Baker. I think for Bryant, it's about, can he again be, he was one of the best players in training camp last year. Can he be that again? Can he perform well in the preseason? Or is he going to end up behind David Njoku? Because I think those two are going to battle it out for tight end 2. And if Bryant wins that job, I think we saw flashes last year, especially in the first half of the season, of how effective he can be in the passing game. He's just got to be consistent. He's got to hang on to the football. He had some fumble issues late, which I think maybe cost him some playing time. But if he holds off Njoku for the tight end 2 spot, he could certainly have a breakout type of year.
Yeah, and both those guys, if they get a little more consistent, Njoku or Bryant, both of them have the ability to be pretty tough offensive weapon, 3rd or 4th weapons on an offense.
Yeah, and this is the best scenario, I think, for Njoku and the Browns, because he's going into a contract year. He's getting paid $6 million on that 5th-year option. He wants to get paid like a number 1 tight end. The Browns, they're going to have a chance to see what he can do this year to decide if they're the team that wants to do it or if they're going to let him walk. But David Njoku in a contract year is really, he's going to be motivated. It's really interesting to see how he comes in. And I thought in the second half of last year, he really kind of snuck up and took some playing time away from Harrison Bryant.
Yeah, and there's a couple catches that he made in that loss to Kansas City that were just outstanding. Dan Labbe, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick timeout. On the other side of the break, we're going to talk a little bit about the Greedy Williams and Greg Newsome competition. Also, the 5 best offseason moves the Browns made. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Better days are ahead. Be ready with the training you'll need to get a great job. If you or your family has experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Whether you want to improve your skills, get certified, or train for a new career, go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So what are you waiting for? Register now for online and on-campus summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
COVID-19 has changed how we show up and show out with our family. Now it's time to take the first step that lets us get back to talking smack with a side of mac and cheese. Before we can safely come together, we need the facts. As COVID-19 vaccines become available, you may have questions. Should I get it? Is it safe?
Should I wait?
It's smart to question. Now, get the facts at getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision when vaccines are available to you.
Sports4CLE continues. Thanks for staying with us. I'm Dave Bacon. We're going to talk about one of the battles that everybody thinks will be really interesting for the Browns coming up, that cornerback spot opposite Denzel Ward. So Greg Newsome, Greedy Williams figure to be battling it out. And Greedy Williams, who coming back from an injury, talked about that and just doing battle with the rookie, Greg Newsome.
We just gonna, do what we do. Greg, great kid, nice footwork, smart, I'm happy for him, man. When first round came here, came to an upcoming franchise, and, I'm happy for him, man. I'm happy for this team. I'm happy for the organization. I'm just ready to get to work with, my brothers and, put the work in.
And Dan, it struck me, Greedy Williams is approaching that the way you want to hear a guy approach it, that, let's go out and compete, and if he wins, great, I'll help him. If I win, I know he'll help me, and everybody's going to have to play.
Yeah, and that's a guy that I think understands the situation. He really had a lost season last year, and it certainly wasn't his fault. It was due to injury, but he just didn't get on the field, and he didn't get a chance to show if he had made strides from that rookie year or not. And I like Greedy as kind of a long corner. I thought he would be a nice complement to Denzel Ward, but the Browns didn't go out and pick Greg Newsome at number 26 because they absolutely believe Greedy Williams can start for them this year and be the corner they want. So it's going to be a really fascinating competition, and it may come down to the style the Browns want to play. If they're going to be a little bit more of a man team, maybe Greedy Williams is the guy for that. If Joe Woods wants to play a little more zone, maybe Greg Newsome fits that a little bit too. So it might come down to scheme as well as who performs better, in those 3 preseason games. And
you know what? As we talked about in the segment prior, it could be game plan dependent. If they want to play more zone, you could end up with Newsome playing, and if they want to play more man, you could end up with Greedy playing on a given week as well.
Part of it too could be, can Greg Newsome play on the inside a little bit?
Yep.
He didn't do a lot of it at Northwestern, but I don't think they view Greedy as a guy that can necessarily move inside and play the slot, and that's sort of what you paid Troy Hill to do. But if Greg Newsome, when you go to these dime packages or whatever, if he can move inside or even, follow if you're playing a team whose best receiver plays inside a lot or plays the slot a lot, maybe Greg Newsome might kind of fit in there and allow Denzel Ward to stay outside. So I think versatility, we've talked about it all offseason. If Greg can show a little bit of versatility, I think that'll help his cause, and we could see situations where you've got Denzel Ward, Greedy Williams, and Greg Newsome on the field all together.
And those are all good things for the Browns defense if they're able to do that. So 5 best offseason moves by Dog Pound Daily. I'm going to read them all off, and then we'll go back and talk about a couple of them. So the 5th best, they have signing Marvin Wilson. 4th, signing Troy Hill. 3rd, managing the cap. 2nd, trading up for Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. And the top one is signing John Johnson. Just as you see those 5, your reaction to those.
The Marvin Wilson one is such an intriguing signing. Obviously, a guy that they paid a lot of money to. I don't know how much of a role he's going to have this year. He might have to make the 53-man roster just so they don't have to put him on waivers to try and get him to the practice squad. So that might work out to his advantage. But I think that's a really interesting number 5 there. I think fans are very curious to see what he can do. And then kind of the sneaky one there in the middle was the cap management part of it. We talked about it. The Browns are working very hard to make sure they don't end up in that salary cap hell where they have to start cutting guys they don't want to cut or making trades they don't want to make. And if you've got Andrew Berry and Paul DePodesta running the show and a whole bunch of Ivy League guys and guys with finance backgrounds, running the show there, you're going to be able to manage that cap pretty effectively.
Yeah, I would say that the way they've managed the cap is as important as anything. And I think Anthony Walker is kind of an underrated signing by some people. I know it kind of happened in the middle of everything, and you had the draft after it where there were some shiny pieces in Greg Newsome and Owusu-Koramoah. I think that's going to end up being a sneaky good signing is Anthony Walker.
Yeah, I agree. He's really kind of the forgotten man because, like you said, there are those shiny toys. Everybody's talking about Owusu-Koramoah, who, by the way, that trade up deserves to be on that list too. But Walker was brought here to be an upgrade of B.J. Goodson, and he was brought here to be a leader on this team. And I don't think there's another guy there that can really beat him out. Jacob Phillips is going to probably play a little bit of Mike, but he's not going to beat out Anthony Walker for that job. I really do believe they view Anthony Walker as a starter and the guy who's going to play a ton of snaps for this team. And we're already seeing it in the spring, how important he's going to be to this defense.
Yeah. Who do you think is kind of an under the radar guy on that defense that could be somebody that people go, boy, that guy's really playing?
Yeah, it could be a guy like a Jacob Phillips. I mean, maybe one of those 2 third-round picks from last year. I think you could pick either of those guys. But Phillips is a guy that, like I said, probably isn't going to beat out Anthony Walker to be the Mike, but I think there's a role for him. Whether it's, playing that weak side linebacker if Owusu-Koramoah isn't ready or playing in the strong side, I think there's a chance he could have a role. And then that defensive tackle room, there's a lot of names in there and there's a lot of bodies in there. But outside of Malik Jackson, I don't know that there's any sure things. I'm excited to see Tommy Togiai and see if he can make an impact early. But there's going to be an opportunity for Jordan Elliott there too. So I would maybe just circle those 2 third-round picks from 2020.
So the Bleacher Report came out with the hottest hot seat for each and every team. Hottest hot seat. Yeah, there's an alliteration there. For the Browns, it's not really a big surprise. They have Odell Beckham Jr., and that's probably fair.
Yeah, it's that, can he finally put it together here? Can he have a season? I don't know that he'll ever have a season like he had in his best years with the Giants, and I don't know that this offense is conducive to him having that type of season. But him and Baker need to really finally connect and finally show that they can play together and Odell can be that downfield weapon and that downfield threat that when John Dorsey made that trade, that's what they envisioned. Just this unstoppable receiving core with a bunch of guys that Baker could play point guard with. So yeah, I think it's got to be Beckham because something has to give here in this wide receiver room, especially with Beckham and Landry both making so much money. I think that's the right place to look if you're going to put some players on the hot seat.
And the flip side of it is if he is able to perform like the Browns think he can, boy, that's going to be some really good things for Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb because you're not going to be able to cheat with people in the box.
Yeah, I mean it's the same concept as when the Titans went out and made that trade for Julio Jones. You looked at it and you said, okay, you've got to defend Julio, you got to defend AJ Brown. How are you going to be able to stop Derrick Henry now if you've got to defend these 2 dynamic wide receivers? Well, now the Browns, if Odell is Odell and Jarvis is working underneath and you've got Rashard Higgins, if Donovan Peoples-Jones, threatening down the field, all these tight ends, it's going to be really hard for defenses to just say, all right, we're going to put 8 or 9 guys in the box and we're going to make sure Nick Chubb doesn't beat us. I just don't know how you do that as a defensive coordinator.
All right, so kind of out of left field here. Do you think Sheldon Richardson has a chance of re-signing with the Browns? Mary Kay has talked a little bit about it. We haven't heard his name tied closely with any one other team. Does that keep it alive for him re-signing with the Browns?
I mean, I think the longer he's out there, the more it feels like there could be a homecoming. I wouldn't rule it out. And like I said, I know this defensive tackle room is crowded, but I don't know that there's anyone in there that I look at and say, that guy absolutely has to be on the field, again, outside of Malik Jackson. So if you're kind of assessing things here after minicamp breaks and you say, you know what, it would be great to have Sheldon back here, and Sheldon maybe hasn't gotten the offers he wants, maybe you bring him back at a lower cost. I think he was an important piece to this team from a leadership standpoint, and what he gives you on the field is obviously great. So yeah, look, the longer he's out there, the more his price drops, and the more of a reality it seems to be. But that is a very, very crowded defensive tackle.
And the flip side from his standpoint, though, he knows what exists there, and he's got to be thinking, if I go there on this quote-unquote prove-it deal, I could end up playing well, them putting me in a situation where I could have success and get a bigger payday when the salary cap goes up next year.
And he knows the system, which is really important. He could wait till right before training camp to sign. He could wait before the preseason starts to sign, because he knows this system. And as long as he stays in shape, maybe this works out well for Sheldon, where he didn't have to worry about any of this spring stuff, OTAs, minicamp, anything like that. And then he can come back, sign a contract right before training camp. As long as he stays ready on his own, this might work out great for him, where he gets to end up coming back to Cleveland, which is a place that I really do think, it had been so long since he had been in one place for more than 1 year in a row. And I think he really appreciated that, being here in Cleveland. So I think coming back would be very appealing to him, especially if he can kind of wait out all this mini camp OTA stuff and just show up the first day of training camp.
Dan Labbe, Browns beat reporter for The Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside and take one more time out. On the other side of the break, we'll talk about some guys that figure to be on the roster bubble. We'll also take a look how good will the Browns offense be this season. Sports for CLE. You'll be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
At Social Security, we are always thinking of ways to save you time and make things easier. That's why we created My Social Security. A My Social Security account allows you to access your earnings history and benefits information, request a replacement Social Security card, get a proof of income letter, estimate and apply for benefits, and more. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security. Securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Welcome back to Sports for CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. We continue talking Browns football with Dan Labbe, Browns beat reporter for The Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. So, Dan, 5 Browns on the roster bubble, according to dogpounddaily.com. Running back Dearness Johnson, linebacker Mack Wilson, Porter Gustin, Malcolm Smith, and defensive back Sheldrick Redwine. Do you see all those guys as kind of battling, and as you look at it, who do you think is in probably one of the toughest battles there?
I think the toughest battle on that list is Mack Wilson. It's hard for me to see where he fits in that linebacking core. Now, Malcolm Smith is interesting. I feel like he's going to make it. He's a veteran. I thought he was one of their better linebackers last year. He was sort of a nice late addition by Andrew Berry to that linebacking core. He was really good in coverage. Now, I know they've upgraded, the coverage at that position, but there's still a lot of young guys you're counting on with Owusu Koromoa. Tony Fields is a guy that we haven't seen yet because he's dealing with a foot injury. He might end up sneaking onto the practice squad ultimately. So I think there's room for Malcolm Smith. Mack Wilson, though, it might come down to him and Sione Takitaki, honestly, two guys that were drafted together, Takitaki in the third, Mack Wilson in the fifth a few years ago. It may come down to one of those two guys.
When you look at like a Porter Gustin, that's a guy who had flashes that were really good, but you mentioned that defensive line room, it's awfully crowded.
And I think that one will come down to what they think of a guy like Curtis Weaver. That's a guy that they kind of grabbed from Miami last year that the Dolphins were trying to sneak through to injured reserve, and the Browns grabbed him off of waivers, and he didn't play because he was hurt. But if they really like him and he kind of shows what he did at Boise State, where he became, I believe he was their all-time sack leader there, really put up big numbers at Boise State. If they like him, then that might spell the end for Porter Gustin. But I don't know that I'd write off Gustin just yet. I think he is a guy they really, really like. And you mentioned it. He's a guy they turned to last year pretty early on when they had some injuries over there.
The fact that we're talking about these kind of guys shows you how the roster has been upgraded. It's a significant upgrade, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
I mean, there's years where you'd look at Porter Gustin and you'd say, oh, man, this guy might start 10 games for this football team. Now, obviously, with injuries, he did get some starts last year. But, yeah, I mean, he's a guy that should be on a bubble on a good football team and should have to earn his spot. And we're talking about guys down the roster. We're not talking about potential starters just having to fight for roster spots. You look at the top of the roster and the 22 to 25 guys that are going to get starting level snaps, and it's pretty set. It's just kind of filling in the other areas of the roster, and that tells you that this is a very talented football team.
So let's shift our focus to the offensive side of football. How good do you think the Browns offense can be? Do you think they can be a top 5 offense in the NFL?
I think they can. And, there's all sorts of different metrics for this. There's, you can look at scoring, you can look at, raw counting stats. Football Outsiders has a great DVOA stat, which is about efficiency. And the Browns finished 9th last year in that stat. I think they have the potential to be a top 5 offense. It wouldn't surprise me. I think they're going to throw the ball more. I think they're going to score more points. I think they're going to be more aggressive offensively because they have a more normal offseason. They're going to have a more normal training camp. These guys all know each other. They've been together. There's definitely the possibility that this offense could rise to that level. And some of these teams, like the Saints had, I believe they were top 5 last year, at least in DVOA. And, that's a team with a new quarterback. So some of these teams that were ahead of the Browns might drop out a little bit too. Just remember the numbers they put up last year. And remember that pretty much all of November was a wash, literally, because it was just rainy and windy throughout that month, and they just weren't able to throw the football.
The other thing is second year for Kevin Stefanski, second year for Baker Mayfield, first time he's been in a system for 2 years since his senior year in college. I mean, that every time I say that, I kind of cringe and shake my head at the thought of that. It should be a big year for Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, he's got Stefanski, Van Pelt. I think having Case Keenum again is really going to help. A guy that he knows really well and knows how to help Baker get ready week to week. And then on top of all that, you're bringing back almost the whole offense. You've got the same offensive line. You've got the same receivers, the same running backs. I don't think this will ever happen again in Baker Mayfield's career, where he has the exact same coordinator, exact same backup quarterback, exact same weapons all across the offense. It's all set up there for him. He'll never have this opportunity again because as this team gets better, offensive coordinators might move on to different jobs and take head coaching jobs. You'll have younger backup quarterbacks. You'll have turnover on that line. You'll have guys leave in free agency. This is all set up for Baker Mayfield to really break out this year.
And think about how we talked about the cap and Andrew Berry managing it. Think about how impressive it is that they do have everybody back in an year where the cap went down significantly and basically forced teams like the Falcons to trade Julio Jones. I mean, that's again another sign of the shape that the Browns are in, because the cap's getting set to go up pretty significantly.
Yeah, and it's just an understanding of how to use the CBA back in 2011 when they put in the rookie contracts, and you didn't draft a guy number 1 overall and pay him $50 million right away like you used to. It's understanding how to kind of have those windows of contention and how to keep those windows open as long as possible. And when Baker Mayfield is on his, quote unquote rookie deal, you can build around him and you can pay 2 receivers a combined $30 million. You can have one of the highest paid tight ends in football. And you've got other young talent in key positions. It's just a real understanding by Andrew Berry that this is the time to go out and make sure that everything is in place around our young quarterback to make him successful.
Dan Labbe, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Dan, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Yep, anytime.
All right, so remember, Dan Labbe can read them in the pages of the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We shift our focus down south a little. We will be joined by Marisa Contipelli. She is a Bengals team reporter for the Cincinnati Bengals. Talk a little Joe Burrow. We'll also talk a little bit about the Cleveland and Cincinnati rivalry that seems to be going between Burrow and Baker. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Life is starting to get back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tric-edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
As the COVID-19 vaccines become available, you might be asking yourself, should I get it? And if I do, will I be able to go about life without putting my family at risk? You've got questions, and that's normal. The fact is, the vaccines are safe and effective. They're going to save lives. To get the latest on the COVID-19 vaccines, visit getvaccineanswers.org, because getting back to the moments we miss starts with getting informed. It's up to you.
Sports for CLE continues. I'm Dave Bacon. We shift our focus a little bit down south to the Cincinnati Bengals, one of the AFC North rivals of the Browns. Let's welcome in Bengals team reporter Marisa Contipelli. Marisa, appreciate the time as always. How excited are the Bengals? Have seen some video of Joe Burrow. He looks like he's moving. He looks like he's pretty good. How excited are the Bengals with where Joe Burrow is at right now?
Yeah, Dave, it is a great sight to see Joe Burrow finally back on a football field. Kind of took the social media world by storm, his very first OTA practice that he returned for. And you know what? He looks pretty darn impressive out there. We all know his kind of mentality and the grit, the demeanor that Joe Burrow brings on and off the field. But to actually see him out there going through drills, connecting with receivers, it's been a sight. And not only, is he looking strong, but he is looking as comfortable as ever. They are being a little cautious with him. They've kind of had him all by himself, kind of on an island. They have had no other players in the backfield with him, just to take that extra step to make sure there aren't any incidental kind of contact with Burrow, because he isn't 100% fully back yet. He's still on that rehab path, but he is on pace to start week 1, barring any unfortunate setbacks that we hopefully do not see here for the rest of OTAs and then rolling into training camp. But my goodness, has it been a sight to see. They've been working a lot this last week on, deep balls and longer routes with some of the receivers. And in just talking to, some of the receivers and even tight end CJ Uzomah, every single guy has mentioned how Joe Burrow has had an extra kind of zip to his passes this spring. And, I know Joe Burrow worked on his mechanics a little bit this offseason, kind of tweaking a few things, and it's really been noticed. Our tight end CJ Uzomah was messing around, and he was saying that, he had to catch passes with gloves on, because when he didn't have his gloves on, it was almost stinging his hands a little too bit. So definitely like to see that out of Burrow, and all signs are really pointing in the right direction with him so far, Dave.
He seems like the type of guy that energizes a team. Fair to say, and have you seen that? Just it's like the leader is back, that kind of deal.
Oh, absolutely. He's just a natural born leader. And you even notice that his rookie year, when he first took the field, he just had that kind of command of respect, and just the way he carries himself and his presence. He is the leader of this offense and of this team. And, he earned that captain's patch last season for a reason. So when you have a guy like him back out at practice, I have to believe that's one of the reasons that the Bengals had 100% participation through OTAs, because you don't want to be that one guy on the team who's not going to show up and work hard. And you have kind of Joe Burrow, leading the charge and making sure that, every single guy in that locker room has their head on straight and, working towards that one common goal.
Marisa, what about the rookies? The names were really familiar to me. I think there's some to be excited about. What rookies do the Bengals appear to really like that they have brought in to the franchise and have now in OTAs?
Yeah, they have a great rookie class who are coming in with some pretty high expectations. Not only do you draft Jamar Chase 5th overall, but, they're expecting him to come in, contribute, start week 1. And, there's pretty high standards and expectations for a guy like Jamar Chase, not only having, that chemistry and connection and comfortability already with Joe Burrow from their time together down at LSU. And, already this spring, he's been looking pretty good. And even veterans like Tyler Boyd have commented that, Chase has come in and he's already a pro. He's already doing the right things, doing what he's supposed to do, staying later after practice. So Chase has been pretty impressive so far this spring. And then you also look at who they drafted in the 2nd round in Jackson Carman, because, he's coming in playing tackle at Clemson, most likely going to be coming in and competing for that right guard position, at least for this season. And so while you're not putting too much pressure on, the young kid right away, because he is a Cincinnati native. So, you do have that little extra kind of, pressure just automatically with him being a local kid. But, they're really expecting him to eventually, whether it's week 1 or week 3 or 4, take over a starting position on that offensive line. So a lot to be said about Jackson Carman. And then, retooling and kind of rebolstering that defensive line was a true priority this offseason for the Bengals. And they really addressed that in the draft with taking Joseph Osai, Tyler Shelvin, and Cam Sample. And all 3 of those guys are expected to really earn and compete for playing time early in that rotation on the defensive line, especially when you look at Osai coming off of the edge, because right now that is kind of an area that they could really improve upon when you get past Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard and looking at the rest of that depth on the edge. And then I have to mention Evan McPherson, the only kicker drafted in this year's class. They fully expect him to, take over that starting position. It's going to be a battle of him and Austin Seibert early on, but you draft a kicker, you expect him to be your starter week 1. And so I know they're really excited about just the potential of Evan McPherson. And he had an opportunity to work with former Bengal Shane Graham down at Florida. So you already have that connection there too. And so, it's not every day that you're getting really excited about specialists down here in Cincinnati, but Evan McPherson has certainly been a fan favorite so far this offseason.
You mentioned Jackson Carman, and that is definitely a local guy, Fairfield High School down in that area. Remember him well. Was a monster of a tackle in high school. Have the Bengals, do they feel pretty good about how they've addressed the offensive line? That was obviously something they wanted to make sure that they did to take care of Joe Burrow, because he looked so good as a rookie.
Absolutely. It was an area that they had to address. And, this team does feel comfortable about the steps that they've taken this offseason. Sometimes national media doesn't quite see, that same, or doesn't feel like they're on that same page. But when you look in just, automatically bringing in Frank Pollock to take over that position group, I mean, it's just impressive right from the start. He's already made a huge impression on a lot of these players, and even guys not in his room like Joe Mixon backing Frank Pollock. He's made a lot of strides already within the guys that are in that group. And, it's only been a few years removed. Frank Pollock was here when they drafted Billy Price. And, I look at this as a make or break year for Billy Price. He has a lot to go out there and prove, as he's going to be competing, probably for that left guard, could potentially be starting at center if Trey Hopkins isn't back fully recovered from his torn ACL injury. So, you have the guy that drafted Billy Price back working with him. So really eager to see what the two of those guys can do together, and how Pollock can, get Price back to where he was when he left Ohio State. But, the biggest acquisition for the Bengals on the offensive line was bringing in Riley Reiff, have him starting at right tackle from the Vikings. I mean, he already just provides a huge upside, and that really veteran presence that they've kind of been missing throughout the last few years. So Riley Reiff is going to be just, that locked in on the right side. And then they really hope to have Jonah Williams back fully healthy, then to take over at left tackle. And in just 10 games last season that he played, he was the highest graded Bengals offensive lineman per Pro Football Focus, graded over a 75 in the pass blocking game. And so when you're able to solidify those two tackle spots, a lot else kind of helps fall into place. And so the key for Jonah Williams, I mean, missed his entire rookie season and then has only had 10 NFL games, is to stay healthy. And so you're eager to see what kind of strides then he is going to take now in his third season in the league. And then, you have Trey Hopkins kind of bolstered, locked in at that center position, has played very well when he's been in. And so then kind of the conversation comes down to who's going to be starting at left guard. And currently you expect it to be a battle between Quinton Spain, Xavier Su'a-Filo, Michael Jordan, and Billy Price. And so when you have that many guys competing, for that final offensive line spot, it's a good thing to have in that room, because it's only going to make each one of those guys better. And it'll be really intriguing to see how that plays out once training camp does roll around, to see who out of that group kind of removes himself from the pack and kind of takes over that left guard spot, because we do expect Jackson Carman, whether it's, like I mentioned earlier, week one or a couple weeks in, to kind of solidify and take over at right guard.
Marisa Contipelli, team reporter for the Cincinnati Bengals, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we'll find out, could a rivalry be renewed between the Browns and the Bengals? Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Better days are ahead. Be ready with the training you'll need to get a great job. If you or your family has experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Whether you want to improve your skills, get certified, or train for a new career, go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So what are you waiting for? Register now for online and on-campus summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
First, they said cigarettes were safe. We know how that turned out. Now, they say they didn't market e-cigarettes to teens? Fact, more than 1 in 4 high school students are vaping, and 80% say their first e-cigarette was flavored. Vaping is harmful to developing brains. The reason we think vaping is safe? Marketing. Same lies, different day. Tell Big Vape to quit lying.
Sports4CLE continues. We continue talking with Marisa Contipelli, team reporter for the Cincinnati Bengals. Marisa, do you sense there's a real rivalry that's kind of going to get taken up a couple of levels. You got Baker Mayfield, you have Joe Burrow. Those are two of the young quarterbacks that have a lot of attention, a lot of talent. Do you sense this is getting ready to go up a level or two with the Cincinnati and the Browns rivalry?
Well, Dave, I sure hope so, because, I mean, just with Baker and Joe Burrow, I mean, two personalities, two quarterbacks with swagger, two really talented individuals on the football field. I mean, those games are fun to watch. I mean, the week was it week 7 or week 8 last season down here in Cincinnati, when it was kind of that last minute Hail Mary or pass attempt that the Browns ended up winning on. I mean, of course, I would like to have seen the Bengals won that one, but it's those kind of games that you want, and that renewed rivalry. And so when you have two younger teams, like the two teams have been trending, I mean, the turnaround that the Browns have made, that's what you're hoping happens down here in Cincinnati, and that, it makes the games fun. And that's what, the residents of this state want. You want Browns versus Bengals to be, highlight, circle that on the calendar every year the schedule comes out, because you're going to get a really entertaining and well-played football game. And so, I think these two quarterbacks are really going to help heighten that and hopefully, take that to the next level.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on where I was going. Last year, Browns made a big step forward with a young head coach in Kevin Stefanski. Do you get the sense that that's kind of what the Bengals think is on the way with Zach Taylor? Again, the young coaches really dealt a tough hand last year. You didn't have training camps. You didn't have preseason games. You didn't really have a lot of the ability to put in place what you wanted to. Do you get the sense that the Bengals feel they're really on the verge of kind of moving up a couple of levels like the Browns did a year ago?
Absolutely. I mean, you're going into year 3 now with Zach Taylor, and there's been steady improvement each year. And of course, last year only winning 4 games. I firmly believe that number would have been higher had Joe Burrow and some of the other key pieces on that roster been healthy in the second half of the season. But the biggest turnaround that Zach Taylor and this team has made, even though it's flashy on offense, they draft Jamar Chase, you have all these different weapons around for Joe Burrow, but it was really, retooling this defense. They've made so many changes, the defensive line and the secondary, and it was absolutely needed. I mean, the defense had a lot of room to improve from a year ago, and they've made those steps in free agency and in the draft. And especially when you look at the secondary, there's going to be 3 brand new starters back there to complement, 2 really strong safeties in Jesse Bates and Von Bell. And so when you look at, okay, the secondary is looking a little bit stronger, to then the pass rush and, losing a veteran and Geno Atkins, you bring in some younger guys. You have DJ Reader, who's, hopefully going to be back and fully healthy this year. The sky's looking pretty bright down here in Cincinnati. And so, you have that trust in Zach Taylor that, he already has the command of the respect out of the locker room. His players are truly behind him. So you're really excited and eager now to see, okay, what kind of strides are they going to take here in year 3? Could it be, getting a little bit closer to kind of that a 500, 9-10 win mark? I think is a very realistic possibility, as long as, everyone stays healthy, and that, Lou Anarumo, defensive coordinator, is really able to piece those new players together and, make this defense take a huge step forward from what they were last year.
Marisa Contipelli, Bengals team reporter, appreciate the time and the insight. I'm sure we'll be asking you to join us during mini camp and training camp and throughout the year. Appreciate it. Thanks very much, Marisa. Thanks for the time.
Of course. Thank you, Dave.
All right, Marisa Contipelli, the team reporter for the Bengals. That'll do it for this edition of Sports4CLE. We will see you again tomorrow, 4 o'clock. Scheduled guests, Mac Robinson and Stephen Means. Buckeyes beat reporter will talk about the expanded college football playoff system that's being talked about for the upcoming seasons. We'll see you again tomorrow at 4. Have a great night, everybody.